Jonh and the Call of Fear. Jonh was a curious boy, different from everyone else in the village. From an early age, he wasn't afraid of the dark, thunder, wolves, or ghosts. He would jump into the deepest river, walk through cemeteries in the middle of the night, and mock the scary stories that made the other children tremble. His father worried. "What kind of man will you be, my son, if you're not afraid of anything?" But Jonh just laughed. Fear to him seemed like nonsense, the talk of weaklings. One day, tired of the boy's strangeness, his father sent him on a trip. "Go, Jonh. See if you can finally learn what fear is." Jonh set out without hesitation. He crossed cities, heard rumors of cursed places, and as he defied ancient dangers and always emerged unscathed, the mystery surrounding his courage only grew. What no one knew was that Jonh needed to feel fear. It was as if he desperately sought an emotion that gave meaning to others' lives and seemed to be missing from his own. Along the roads, many tried to scare him. They showed him corpses, wild animals, hideous masks. Nothing. Jonh continued indifferently, almost bored, until he heard from the king of a distant kingdom. Whoever could spend 3 nights in the haunted castle would win the hand of the princess and many treasures. It was the ideal test, if ever there was one capable of finally teaching Jonh to tremble. Jonh introduced himself to the king. Many had tried before, but none had returned sane. The castle was surrounded by legends, fire appearing out of nowhere, apparitions, screams in the night, faceless beings. Jonh accepted immediately. "If anyone can show me what fear is, they're in." The king doubted. "Brace yourself, boy. There, no one faces only monsters. There, every man faces himself. But is Jonh the fearless ready for the night when even courage can be devoured by its own shadow? Keep going, because the first night will turn everything upside down. The first night, bones, ghosts, and the invisible challenge. The sun set, and Hansel crossed the creaking gate of the cursed castle alone. The silence was so thick it seemed to muffle his own pulse. Armed only with a fire and 3 tools, a lathe, a workbench, and several saws, all provided by the king under the pretext of passing the time, Hansel settled into the great hall, laughing at the terror said to dwell there. As soon as midnight struck on the forgotten clock, muffled voices and a freezing wind made the windows rattle loudly. Jonh, impassive, rekindled the fire. Suddenly, a translucent figure burst through the wall carrying a sack on its back. From it spilled skulls, tibias, broken bones, and grinning jaws. It scattered them all on the floor and grunted, "Let's play." It was an invitation to a macabre game of bowling using human heads instead of balls, bones as pins. Jonh simply thought it was funny. "Maybe, but your pins are poorly cut, let me straighten them." He picked up the saw and began carving bones like someone distracted in a workshop, oblivious to the terror. The other ghosts appeared, forming an audience, eyeless bodies, children made of smoke, wandering hands, laughter echoing without mouths. Jonh laughed and played, determined to have fun while he waited for fear. At the height of the game, one of the ghosts shouted, "Aren't you afraid, human?" And Jonh replied, looking deep into the darkness, "No, I just don't know what might scare me yet." Finally, the spirits vanished. Frustrated, Jonh arranged the bones, lay down on the wooden bench, and waited for daybreak. When dawn broke, the king's guards entered, expecting to find just another corpse. Instead, they found Jonh yawning and telling of his different game. Not even death playing with him had been able to teach him what it means to tremble. If the first night was just a warm-up, what happens when the dead decide to take the game to the next level? Don't turn off the screen. Jack's second night will be even darker, and the castle never repeats the same trick twice. The second night, the flying bed and ghost fire. The castle seemed even more hostile the second night. Jonh lit the fireplace, trying to ignore the feeling that the walls were watching his every move. When the clock struck midnight, the room went completely dark. The temperature plummeted. Out of nowhere, 4 silent black men emerged from the floor, carrying a massive bed covered in worn sheets and with legs made of bones. They ordered, "Lie down, Jonh. Today, your sleep will be different." Jonh accepted, curious. No sooner had he settled in than the bed flew through the air, slamming into the walls, rising until it touched the ceiling, spinning like a ghostly whirlwind. The floor shook. Blue flames spread from the corners, snaking near his feet. Jonh held on tight and instead of screaming, laughed at the unexpected. "I don't think I've ever flown like that. Can you go faster?" The men threw the bed to the floor with force. Jonh jumped and, seeing the fire approaching, ran to put it out using buckets full of water, devising methods to avoid being burned. Ghostly flames tried to surround him, but he faced them like someone playing at sunset, completely oblivious to the real danger. At the height of danger, luminous creatures appear, dancing in the shadows. "Jonh, aren't you afraid of the fire of the soul? Those who refuse to feel the heat of threat will never know what it means to truly live." Jonh was unmoved. He overcame each challenge, learned to put out fires no one had ever mastered. In the end, the bed exploded in a beam of light, revealing a chest. Inside, gold coins and jewels gleamed, but that wasn't what Jonh was looking for. If fear is not in the dark, nor in the fire, nor in the abyss, where does it hide? The sun rose. The king's guards found Jonh tossing coins in the air, bored. He survived once again, where everyone said no one could. Each night the castle reveals a new secret, but will Jonh finally find the fear he seeks on the third and final night? Or will he discover that his entire fate depends on something even deeper? Continue. The third night is where all the monsters show their true face. The third night, the revelation of true fear. By the third night, Jonh no longer knew whether to expect ghosts, monsters, fire, or something entirely new. The castle, even darker, seemed to pulse with a greater secret, like the last beat before silence. Shortly after midnight, everything changed. A biting cold filled the hall. An ancient figure appeared, trembling, hooded, holding branches and grotesque creatures. It was death itself. With it came all its enemies, ghosts of murdered nobles, infernal beasts, voices of those who never rested. They surrounded Jonh, asking him riddles. "Don't you feel horror at the end? Aren't you afraid of becoming one of them, condemned to haunt forever?" Jonh stood firm, looked death in the eye and replied, "Not yet. Maybe because I've never lost anyone." Death smiled menacingly. "Well, now you will feel it." Images of pain, loss, loneliness, and abandonment were projected around him. Jonh began to tremble, not from the terror of the monsters, but from the sudden realization of everything he had risked. For the first time, he hesitated, felt a chill run down his spine, and thought, being fearless after all took me away from the one I love. What if I lose everything? What if emptiness is the price? Death retreated. The monsters vanished. Only Jonh remained alone, facing his own echo. Deep down, what really scares us isn't ghosts. It's the fear of being forgotten, of not belonging, of never learning to love. The day dawned pale, and Jonh staggered out of the castle different. Everyone in the kingdom celebrated. He had won the challenge, won riches, and won the princess's hand. But inside him, something had awakened. Jonh defeated all the monsters in the castle. But did he defeat the greatest of all? The fear that lives within the soul? Don't leave there, because John's true lesson without fear is yet to come. The fear that finally arrives. Jonh received the treasures and married the princess. In the palace, Everyone celebrated him as an invincible hero, one who defied the impossible and returned victorious. But inside, Jonh carried a question he never abandoned. Why do I remain unafraid? Have I failed at something only the heart can understand? The days passed, and the life of luxury brought no answer. The princess, disturbed by seeing her husband so distant from his feelings, wanted to help him finally feel fear. One night, while Jonh slept, she threw a bucket of cold water over him, filled with live, pulsating fish. Jonh woke up screaming, feeling his body icy, the fish sliding over his skin. Electric, trembling, he finally knew fear, and laughed, cried, celebrated. It wasn't the fear of monsters and ghosts, but the simple, human, unexpected fright. There was the emotion he'd sought throughout the journey, and which only reveals itself when we allow ourselves to be surprised, when we let down our defenses. The court didn't understand his relief, but Jonh finally felt whole. He discovered that life isn't about overcoming fear, but about going through it with it, accepting vulnerability, laughing at the scares, crying at the losses, celebrating the encounters, and even the missed encounters. How many Johns continue to look for fear in the wrong places, avoiding feeling it so as to never fall apart? What if the secret lies in embracing the fear, allowing the surprise, recognizing that everything that truly matters requires courage and requires feeling? If this story touched you, share the video, leave your comment. What was your biggest fear overcome? Or what still awaits you in some dark castle? Subscribe to the channel and join us in the next stories. Here, every monster, shadow, or princess serves to awaken pieces of who we are. Because this is what life is. Not the absence of fear, but the courageous embrace of the unknown, on and off screen.